Welcome to the Soulful Insights Podcast, where we guide you on a journey to nurture your soul, calm your mind, and awaken your spirit through meditations, discussions, and practical guidance to help you uncover your soul's purpose, embrace your spiritual sovereignty, and unlock your true potential. So I'm really excited about today's topic. We're going to be discussing manifesting or the law of attraction, but we're going to be talking about how these teachings can be spiritually, psychologically, and mentally harmful to a lot of people. The way that the law of attraction or manifesting is typically taught is not trauma-informed and views the universe as a mechanistic, almost cosmic vending machine. And I want to kind of explain how this can be harmful and then explain a better more trauma-informed approach to manifesting. Before we begin, I want to be very clear that I absolutely do teach the art of manifesting. And at the end of this podcast, I'm going to explain to you how this law of attraction can work for you from a more trauma-informed approach. I will discuss this approach that recognizes the universe as less of a mechanistic, cold-hearted vending machine and more as a conscious universe that provides in a more loving and gentle way. And this has been something very important to me as an abuse survivor. So let's get into it. The law of attraction and manifesting techniques that have been widely adopted in various spirituality communities without scrutiny can be very harmful. I do want to acknowledge that some of the fundamental tenets of the law of attraction or manifesting do indeed work on several levels. However, the way they are presented can cause significant spiritual and psychological harm. My intent in doing this episode is not to dissuade anyone from belief in the law of attraction or manifestation, but to call out the lack of responsibility for harm caused by these teachings to those who have experienced childhood trauma, PTSD, who suffer from mental illness, among many other experiences where these teachings tend to engage in victim blaming. According to promoters of the law of attraction, suffering is caused by the negative mental state of the individual, which then in turn attracts negative experiences to them. And this is just the basic teaching. The law of attraction then offers the solution to the individual who is suffering simply through positive thinking, maintaining positive emotional states, eliminating negative thoughts and emotions. Many teachings often involve visualizations of what you want and believing that you've already have what you desire and all of that. And this seems fairly innocuous on the surface, but there are significant harms that underlie its seemingly innocent basic teaching. But I'm sure you can kind of see where this kind of can go off the rails, where you're taught that what happens to you is from your own negative thoughts or negative emotions, and they're basically telling people that abuse or anything like that they have called upon themselves, essentially. If you follow the teachings of any law of attraction or manifesting guru, you'll notice that they're teaching meditation, chanting affirmations, vision boards, going to expensive conferences, believing that you've already received your wishes and the universe will respond like a vending machine to your wildest dreams. You can manifest money, your dream job, even your soulmate. The idea of manifesting your dreams isn't where the harm these teachings cause enters into the psyche of its followers. It's in the avoidance of negative emotions and victim blaming that comes as a result of these teachings. So like I said, on the surface, it seems to be exciting, motivating, but underneath, they become extremely problematic with significant psychological consequences. So number one, the universe in the law of attraction or manifesting theology is cold, lacks compassion or conscience, and is just mechanistic. The universe of the law of attraction is not loving. It has no consciousness and it has no mercy. It essentially operates like a cosmic vending machine. A cosmic vending machine at your beck and call sounds like a dream come true. Unless you're suffering from PTSD as a war veteran or a victim of rape or abuse, a victim of chronic childhood abuse. And then this mechanistic vending machine is just going to continually dole out more and more trauma and suffering to you. All of a sudden, it isn't a dream come true. This universe in the world of manifesting and the law of attraction is not sentient, shows no mercy. It merely accepts whatever emotion you put into it and spits out more of it in your life, whether you want it or not. The key to success in this law of attraction or manifesting universe is simply learning how to manipulate this law for every egotistic desire you can come up with. In this universe, there's no reason to strive to live according to a higher level of consciousness, to learn to operate from heart-based consciousness instead of selfish desire. In this universe, whoever learns to manipulate this law can have all their selfish desires manifest in their life. There's no reason to avoid being amoral, evil, or cruel in this universe because it's just a slot machine. It'll spit out whatever you desire as long as you believe you already have it and avoid negative thoughts or emotions. It's a done deal. But if you look at the underbelly of this law of attraction or manifesting, you see a complete and total lack of compassion or empathy or mercy for those who suffer. According to law of attraction teachings, and even those of karma, every victim of childhood sexual abuse, violence, rape, incest, or the greatest traumas inflicted upon humans, it is the victim's fault. They manifested that into their life. So essentially you, as the victim, are responsible for your own suffering. It's your fault, according to the law of attraction, and karma too. There's absolutely no responsibility required of the perpetrator. No acknowledgement of the criminal behavior, of the suffering, of the trauma, no. Just merely placing the blame squarely on the shoulders of the victim. You called this into your life. All the suffering in your life is your own fault. You either had negative thoughts in this lifetime that brought it upon you, or you committed some act in a previous lifetime that you don't even remember, but the bill has come due in this lifetime, and therefore, regardless of how you see it, ultimately, you are responsible. This is really difficult. You're to blame for being born into a third world country into poverty, according to the law of attraction. You're to blame for your starvation, for your sickness. It's all your fault. Oh, you were brutally beaten and raped and left for dead? Oh, your fault. You were just negatively thinking or had negative emotions and brought this negative thing upon yourself. So now their empowering view is that when you take responsibility, your responsibility for being brutally beaten, for being born into poverty and starvation, when you take responsibility for that, you can then turn it around. Again, this is the ultimate form of victim blaming. This kind of thinking may empower individuals who have the means and ability to change their circumstances, or it may empower individuals who've never truly suffered these types of things. But for those who were born into poverty, starvation, who were brutally beaten, have gone through extreme trauma, this leaves them feeling guilt, shame, and powerless because they are suffering with anxiety and the effects of PTSD and trauma, and they're being told it's all their fault. These teachings are not empowering for underprivileged people, such as starving children in third world countries, children who are forced into human trafficking, systemic injustices, inequalities in societies, racism, gender-based violence and oppression, where individuals really are powerless. These teachings just blame the victim. And that's where I have a problem with this. As we turn from socioeconomic or physical situations of powerlessness and suffering, We move into the psychological damage of these teachings for individuals who suffer from a myriad of mental health issues. This is where the victim blaming and disempowering messages can dramatically increase psychological torment rather than alleviate it. There are absolutely situations in which people get into patterns of self-sabotage, absolutely, or have some responsibility for suffering. But this is certainly not always the case, especially in childhood trauma. I know in the spiritual community, another common belief is that we, quote, choose everything that happens to us. And so in this context, we are also responsible for choosing our own suffering in this life. This is an overly simplistic view that completely ignores the free will of others and choice. When you enter this physical plane of existence, there will always be a level of uncertainty in life. Not everything is predestined or predetermined or pre-selected by the soul, nor is everything predictable. This is a topic for another day, obviously, but when you have free will, there is always unpredictability of which way is this person going to choose. You know, someone that's going to rob the gas station, at any moment, they could change their mind. It could shift. There are many paths that the soul can take, many choices the soul can take. So when you come into a physical plane of existence, there is this, it isn't just that everything that happens to you, you chose, it's your fault, whatever. I think that part of when we come into this physical plane of existence, we also accept a level of unpredictability. There may be things that happen to you that are just not predictable depending on the decisions and choices that any individual makes in any one moment. But that's, again, like I said, that's a topic for another day. But I just want to put that out there that we need to stop blaming people for their trauma and their suffering and telling them they chose it and it's their fault. It isn't helpful and it isn't true. In the worldview created by the law of attraction, individuals who suffer from mental illness like PTSD, OCD, bipolar, schizophrenia, trauma, anxiety, depression, intrusive tormenting thoughts, they are all in grave danger of creating a constant, unrelenting attraction of pain and suffering in their life because of their mental illness. What kind of universe is this? Their fear, anger, depression, traumatic intrusive thoughts, their suffering associated with their mental illness is literally a one-way ticket to hell on earth, according to manifesting and the law of attraction. The reality is the vast majority of anxiety and intrusive thoughts, no matter how persistent, never actually manifest into reality. Most proponents of the law of attraction claim that the universe has a time lapse built into it, so that you don't manifest negative thoughts and emotions immediately. So if you change them really fast, then it won't come into fruition, which is kind of a way of sidestepping the toxic nature of the way they approach the law of attraction or manifesting. But it doesn't solve the issue because there are a lot of us out there who have suffered a lot of traumatic events, who struggle with intrusive thoughts throughout our entire lifetime, and they don't change. I've had a lot of intrusive thoughts myself that have never manifest, even though it's been years and years and years that I've struggled with them. They don't manifest, and there's a reason why they don't manifest, and we're going to get into that later, but the universe doesn't work this way. There are individuals with PTSD, trauma, grief, and chronic intrusive thoughts who do not have the luxury of quickly changing these negative thought patterns so they don't end up manifesting hell on earth for themselves. It doesn't work like that. As a survivor of childhood abuse, sexual abuse, among many other traumatic events in my life, I've always been plagued by severe anxiety from my earliest memories. By the time I was 5 years old, my first experience with sexual abuse was when I was 5 years old. I've had anxiety ever since I can remember, terrible anxiety. I have tormenting, intrusive thoughts and mental anguish that is really hard for me to rise above, and it'll come upon me in times of stress. It took me years and years and years to heal from a lot of this. And the idea that the mental torment from a history of abuse and trauma would manifest more hell into my life is nothing short of psychological and spiritual abuse. And this is what is happening with the law of attraction and manifesting teachings in general, how they are approached. In this version of the law of attraction, if it were true, having PTSD or being chronically plagued by tormenting intrusive thoughts would create a continual storm of hell on innocent victims who are simply trying to heal from unspeakable trauma. What a frightening universe to live in. This kind of teaching is a tragedy, and it places unspeakable burden on individuals who are trying to heal from mental illness or even just the loss of a loved one, or any other extreme type of suffering that is just part of the human condition. You don't get out of this type of suffering. We can't manifest or law of attraction our way out of suffering in this life. It will not happen. Every single one of us are going to experience hardships in this life. You don't get out of it. And so the idea that we can just manifest everything that we want without any adversity, that is not what this physical plane of existence is. It's not what it was meant to be. And so to just try to ignore it and claim that every person who is suffering, it's their own fault is just terrible. How can you properly heal from trauma if you're not allowed to feel the full range of emotions that accompany that trauma? You can't. You can't. So you're trying to heal from trauma, spending years or however long it takes feeling the emotions and trying to work through this. The universe is, by that point, is just going to start manifesting more to you, right? How can you heal from the loss of a loved one if you have to curtail your grief to a certain time frame so the universe doesn't start spitting out more death and destruction in your life? It's like, nope, don't grieve over a loved one for years. You know, your absolute soulmate that you were in love with for decades of time, you can grieve for a year, but after that, the universe is going to start spitting out more death and destruction in your life if you don't stop. How is that helpful to anyone? Individuals who suffer from phobias or bipolar or other conditions that result in significant episodes of depression, they would simply just manifest more mental anguish in their life instead of receiving mercy or assistance through their suffering. Do you see how toxic and abusive these teachings can be? If you suffer from chronic anxiety, everything you suffer with anxiety over is just going to continually plague you as you constantly manifest it into your life. Those who struggle with OCD may begin to obsessively focus on their negative thoughts and try to control them, which, as we know, doesn't work. And then they manifest more negativity into their life. This whole idea of how this universe just spits out stuff at you, it's like a fire hose to the face for those who suffer. This is not a world that I would ever want to live in. So what becomes of the adherent to the law of attraction? They are constantly ignoring the full range of human emotions, carefully wording everything they say. Toxic positivity sets in. They start blaming victims for their suffering and thinking that this toxic state of avoidance of the human condition is somehow going to manifest wealth, the home of their dreams, the love of their life. This is not healthy. Toxic positivity is not healthy. We need to experience the full range of human emotions without fear of punishment from the universe. The human condition in this physical plane of existence is supposed to be one of free will. But along with that free will comes a high level of uncertainty and risk. It is also a law of the universe that we cannot interfere with the free will of anyone else. And therefore, no amount of positive affirmations, meditations, visualizations, or whatever else intentions can take away the risk and uncertainty of life. It just can't. And avoiding the emotions associated with that isn't helping anyone either. The law of attraction and manifesting teaches adherents to suppress and deny what they deem negative emotions. Suffering, grief, they're essentially teaching adherents to suppress their own humanity, their own experience on this physical plane. Spiritual bypassing occurs as individuals buy into spiritual ideology that requires them to suppress all so-called negative emotions. And if they don't, they will face significant consequences from the cosmic, heartless vending machine universe. The spirituality offered by manifesting or the law of attraction is mechanistic, heartless, relentless, and cruel. Victims are blamed. Those who suffer mental illness are at a disadvantage and risk of constant torment from the universe. Adherents are encouraged to put band-aids over grief, suffering, mental illness, or any type of suffering in order to avoid the wrath of the universe. Emotions are categorized as good and bad. Adherents are encouraged to suppress or avoid the, quote, bad emotions, so that they do not fall victim to the mechanistic universe who will give them more of these bad experiences and emotions. The issue with this is that in this physical existence, all emotions are normal. Not only are they normal, but we are meant to experience this broad range of emotions while we're here. If you have absolutely no painful emotions as the result of a tragedy or loss of a loved one, that in itself is a serious mental health issue. All emotions are useful and provide us with information about life and our current situation. This information can increase our self-awareness and provide us with the opportunity to respond, to learn, and to grow. Suppressing and ignoring emotions is unhealthy and can have long-term consequences. When approaching the topic of manifesting or the law of attraction, we have to be sensitive to the realities of living in the physical world. Most teachers of manifesting and the law of attraction are not trauma-informed, and while I believe they have good intentions, their approach to this topic can be extremely damaging. If you experience a traumatic event in your life, the universe is not going to punish you for suffering with grief, sorrow, depression, anxiety, or any other emotion in connection with these events in your life. Can you use the law of attraction or manifest better things in your life, even if you struggle with depression, anxiety, or other emotional or mental health issues? The answer is absolutely you can. First and foremost, I think it's important to recognize that if you're struggling with strong emotions or mental health issues, it's important to work with a coach or a therapist or some type of professional that can work with you to help you process the emotions and to heal. That's really important. Your spiritual and emotional and mental healing is crucial, not because of any law of attraction or manifesting or any of this type of stuff. That healing is crucial for your own well-being. As you are working through these difficult issues, you can engage in all kinds of practices to help you use the law of attraction or manifesting to improve your life. You can work with meditation, visualizations, thought reframing, a lot of practices that can help you along your journey. The thing that I want to drive home with you in this episode is the universe has consciousness and does not merely respond to every thought or emotion that you have. It responds to those that you continually focus on with intention and purpose. Okay? I want to kind of emphasize that again. The universe has consciousness. The universe, by its very fabric, is love. Everything that is created with the essence of love, which is what the divine creator is. Love. So we don't have this mechanistic universe that's going to punish the suffering and all of it. No. That's not how this works, okay? When you start to recognize that the universe is consciousness, that it is framed by love. It isn't just going to punish your every thought and emotion on this earth that you have. If you go through years of depression and anxiety and struggling in your life, it doesn't mean that you're just going to continually manifest that for the rest of your life and bring things in. That's not how it works. It's responding to those things that you are holding on to with intention and purpose. You have this intention for your life. You are working towards, that you are putting purpose behind. These emotions in response to trauma, you don't have intention and purpose behind those. And the universe is not going to just keep throwing that at you. You're not going to be punished for your suffering. You're not going to be punished for your trauma. Okay? You will find that as you start moving through healing, even with negative thoughts, negative emotions, as you continue with intention and purpose in your mind, you can watch the universe support you in your healing. You're still in a negative space, but you're putting intention and purpose behind healing, you're going to get that support. It isn't just going to spit out more pain and suffering as you're trying to heal. This is completely goes against any sense of logic whatsoever. It is time that we start teaching the law of attraction or manifesting from a place of sensitivity to those with mental illness and trauma in a very trauma-informed way. I want to give you some of my own personal experiences to highlight the fact that this has nothing to do with negative thoughts or negative emotions, depression, or any of the other things that you might typically hear. I've experienced the wonderful fruits of the law of attraction or manifesting myself, but it was not quite as magical and simple as most people teaching these methods would have you believe. So I'm going to give you an example. I've always wanted to live out and away from the hustle and bustle of even suburban life. I'm not even talking like city life. In 2016, I developed a very strong desire to move onto 40 acres. I don't know where I got that number from, but that was the number that I wanted. And I wanted to live out in the middle of nowhere. Not too far from civilization, but far enough. And I want to be very clear about how this unfolded, because it is not how most manifesting or law of attraction teachers would tell you this works. I never visualized anything. I never once meditated on this desire. I didn't do anything fancy. What I did do is focus on this desire, and I would not let it go. I did keep an image of what I wanted in my mind, but I wasn't really even doing that intentionally. I just was like, this is what I want, and I'm not going to let it go. Like, I am going to continually seek this out until I get it. That was the only thing I did. It was nothing fancy. And I talked to my husband about this, and he just didn't see how we could accomplish this with his job, because his job was in the capital of the state that we live in. Very, very busy city. Now, we lived in the suburbs, like 45 minutes away from the main office. So we didn't live in a big city area, but it was still, I mean, you think about it, a 45-minute drive away. We weren't close. Now, he worked mostly from home, but he did have to go to the office and meet with clients in the city. But I still held tightly to this desire. Like, I was not going to let it go. I'm going to find a way to make this work. And I held tightly onto this desire. And in 2019, I started looking at property, but realized 2016 to 2019, we're looking at 3 years going by. I just started kind of randomly looking at property in different areas. And in 2020, I was just determined to make this work. And my husband was more on board at this point, and so we went and stayed in a beautiful carriage house on 40 acres in a rural town, and we both fell in love with this house. My husband actually called and offered to buy the place from the owners, which obviously they were not selling, but we wanted this house, we wanted this land, and at this point we were both on board with my dream of living on 40 acres. I started designing the floor plan of the house that I wanted. We loved the carriage house that we stayed in, but it didn't have some of the features we wanted. It didn't really have a dining room. It didn't have a master bathroom, so it didn't have some of the things that we wanted. And so I started designing it with this home had big, beautiful windows and was very light inside. So I designed a little bit bigger house. I started designing the home, and we kept looking for property. And by September of 2021, we found the 40 acres I'd been dreaming of for the last, 5 years or so. It was exactly 40 acres. It was beautiful, tucked in on the bench of the mountains. And there was a dirt road that goes in front of the 40 acres right up a canyon of beautiful trees. And that canyon road dead ends way up. We're talking probably 7,000 feet above sea level or so at a picnicking area. It's just beautiful. It was exactly what I was looking for. So you think, oh, look at that. That was great. Well, it took me 5 years. But was building the house easy? No. There were no utilities at this property. It was 2 miles outside of a town of 250 people. So we had budgeted $40,000 for a well. We dug a $35,000 well that was completely dry. And we had to drill on another spot on our property. And it ended up costing us $85,000 by the time we were done. We hired a plumber, paid half down, only to have him take off with the $4,000 and disappear. This $4,000 was out of our own bank account. It was not on a loan. So we just lost $4,000. And we also, because we didn't have a plumber, and the foundation guys were going to come and start pouring cement and doing all this stuff, me and my husband ended up watching YouTube videos, and we did the underground plumbing ourselves. But this is another aspect of this. We ran into a snag, and I said, you know what? It's going to be fine. We can learn how to do it ourselves. We've been in this house for 1.5 years, and the underground plumbing is working fine. So it worked out, but we were out in 105-degree weather digging trenches and laying underground plumbing ourselves. We moved into a camping trailer in a KOA in December of 2021 to start the building process. The hot water heater in the trailer broke. We did not have hot water for 4 months in the dead of winter. We're talking 17 degrees outside. 17 degrees Fahrenheit. Sometimes lower. We had to shower in the KOA bathrooms. Our home was not finished until February 2023. 1.5 years it took us to build this home. We were living in a camping trailer in a KOA the whole time. This dream of mine was not a walk in the park. But right now, I am recording this podcast from our beautiful home on 40 acres, and we've been living here for just over 1 year. Our dream has finally come true. My husband has made beautiful landscaping. We have all the water we could ever need from the well that we dug. Was it easy? No. Was it fast? No. I'm not saying that it always has to take years or that it has to be hard, but I want to be honest and real with you. Most of the time when you are manifesting something into your life, it takes a very focused effort of keeping that image of what you want to manifest in your mind, along with consistent daily effort towards that goal. And a lot of people would say, well, it was just your effort. Maybe. There were a lot of synchronicities and a lot of things that happened to make this work that were outside of what my own efforts could have done, though. And I feel like this is how it works. The universe was supporting our efforts in this. But it isn't something that you can just sit there and visualize all day and it just shows up. Many people will just say, you just work for what you want. It has nothing to do with manifesting. And if that concept resonates with you, that's also perfectly fine. There is no one right or wrong way to do anything. But I've had too many synchronicities in my life to ignore that there is something bigger at play than my own meager efforts. The universe is like your greatest cheerleader and supporter. It is conscious. It its entire fabric of creation is love. So when you hold an image in your mind with the intention that that is what you desire, and you begin to work towards that goal along with the work of living according to the frequency necessary, it comes to fruition. That's how this works. It isn't that you are suffering and struggling from trauma and the universe is just going to spit that out at you. This is a goal, an intention, and a desire. It's something I'm working towards. It is something that I'm moving towards. Nobody's moving towards trauma and suffering and pain. That isn't anyone's intention here. Does it happen? Yeah, that's one of the risks of living in the physical plane that we don't entirely always have control over. But it isn't that you manifested it or created it yourself, and it's not your fault. The universe has consciousness. It is not mechanistic. This mechanistic view of the universe disconnects us from love, compassion, and oneness. It creates a reality where trauma inflicted merely creates a never-ending loop of hell for the suffering. I do want to comment on the idea of frequency or vibration here. When I was working on manifesting the 40 acres, the home I desired, I still struggled with depression. A lot of that time I was in functional freeze, if you're familiar with that. I had suffered a lot of trauma that I did not know how to heal. I had worked with a couple of psychologists or therapists who created more trauma for me. And I was not willing to talk to anyone because I had tried a couple of therapists. They're quite expensive and left me worse than I was before. And so I lived in functional freeze. I was up and down. Sometimes we're good. Sometimes we're hard. I lived with anxiety my entire life. I have always had painful, tormenting thoughts that I have battled my entire life because I have lived with a history of physical and sexual abuse, among other traumas. But did any of this trauma, anxiety, or depression stop me from manifesting the 40 acres in my beautiful home? Absolutely not. And I think that's the most important thing here. We need to stop blaming victims for what happened to them. You don't know why something happened to someone, so stop telling them that you do. You don't know. What we need to do is stop saying, I know why a bad thing happened to you, or stop saying that and just help people. We need to uplift each other. Because your suffering or your depression isn't going to prevent you from having good things happen to you in your life. It isn't. Now, the other thing that I like to talk about is being on a certain frequency or vibration. This is often talked about in the spiritual community. It's talked about a lot with the law of attraction, manifesting a lot of that, right? And a lot of times we associate frequency or vibration with toxic positivity. So you being on a certain frequency, they say you have to be in a certain frequency or vibration of the thing that you want, and then it will come into your life. Problem with that is it's not about the feelings and emotions you have. It's not about depression. It's not about grief. It's not about the emotions and things that you're struggling with in your life. Now, if you're just negative Nancy and just see the world as negative, not because of trauma or anything else, you're just a super negative person, that definitely needs to be fixed. Okay. So I want to make that very clear. This is not about the people who hate everyone, are angry all the time, that just see the world in a negative way. That definitely needs to be remedied. But the frequency or vibration that you're on is not about your feelings. It's about how you live your life. Very different. Because you can be struggling with depression and struggling with anxiety in your life, but you are also a kind and compassionate and loving person. You live a wonderfully positive life in putting positivity out in the world despite your depression and despite your struggles. So does that make sense? It's more about what you're putting into the world than how you're feeling at the time. Or if you're having negative, intrusive thoughts because of trauma or hard things that have been going on in your life, but you are still being kind to other people, you're still putting goodness into the world, you're still living from heart-based consciousness, that's all it is. It's not about ignoring your feelings, ignoring what you're struggling with. It's not about that. But it's also about not allowing the pain and the things that you're struggling with in your life to spill more of that out into the world. That's where we're talking about frequency and vibration. Okay? Frequency and vibration is about how you show up in the world, not whether you're suffering from depression or anxiety. Now, I don't want to get too much into this because this is another topic, but it does relate to this idea of manifesting or the law of attraction. But I want to be very clear that any mental illness or emotional struggles that you're going through are not going to impede you receiving good things in your life. The universe doesn't work that way. The divine creator did not create this world and this universe in that way. It was created from love. It was created to love and support you in this journey. It was not created to punish you for harms and trauma that you experience. And I think that's the biggest take-home message that I want you to get from this episode is seeing the universe with consciousness and with love, and knowing that you have a spirit team and a universe and everything that you are surrounded by that is there to support you. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that. I do want to acknowledge that, and I felt that in my life, like at different times, like why does everything feel so hard? And we all go through that. It's part of our journey. It's part of our experience here. It's not easy all the time. But you will find synchronicities that come along, people that come into your life, things that happen where you can see that divine support that kind of leads you out of that darker place. It does, because it's about love. It's not about just continually feeding trauma to people that have been traumatized. I hope that this episode has given you a different perspective, because I know a lot of people ask questions about the law of attraction and how it relates to trauma and mental illness and, you know, just the regular human emotions. And I hope that this has been a good explanation for you. If you're interested in hearing more about this, let me know. You can find me on social media or anywhere else. Let me know if you're interested in learning more about how to use this in a more trauma-informed way, because I think that's really important that we support people who are struggling and let them know that they do have hope, that there is hope. Everyone needs to have hope for a better future and hope that there is love and support in the universe. And I think that that's something that we all need to be able to feel. So I really appreciate you joining me for this episode, and I hope that it brought a little bit of happiness and joy into your life, and I will see you next time.